Hello, and welcome to the second episode of So VT Book Talk. I'm your host, Karen Simpson McVicker, and I'm joined again this month by Jess Hunsicker, who is the events coordinator at the Northshire Bookstore in Manchester, Vermont. Hey, Jess.
Hi, Karen.
It's so nice to see you again.
I know, it's so much fun to be here.
I know. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can introduce this month's author guest.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. So today we have Jon Clinch with us, and he's the author of acclaimed novels Finn, Kings of the Earth, The Thief of Auschwitz, Belzani, Dreams of Egypt, Marley, and his newest book. Yes, The General and Julia. He's a native of upstate New York, and he lives here in Vermont now. So will you please start by telling us a little about your book?
I'd be happy to, and I appreciate being here. It's a great gift to have this opportunity. This is the first time I'll be taught. This is an experiment. This is a thought experiment. What is he going to say? It's always a hard thing when you go out and start talking to people about a book, even before it's a book, really, because you're always experimenting with the best way to sort of indicate what it's about and interest people and be true to yourself and true to the project. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. It's important to think, I've done historical fiction in the past, and it's really important for me to kind of think about the difference between history and fiction. And I think you can really sum it up by saying that the historian can tell you what happened, and the novelist, his job is to tell you how it felt.
I like that.
And if we can, you have to have the right material to do that with, though. And I see that we'll be recommending some historical fiction here later today. And I hope and I'm sure we'll see the same kind of commitment to character. The character in this case, General Ulysses S. Grant, was in his time probably the most famous, beloved, revered human being on the planet. He was beloved and venerated from all sides. The North loved him, the South loved him. They loved him from every direction. They loved him across the aisle in the Congress. They loved him in every foreign country you could name, especially after he was president. He toured the world and was feted with parades everywhere. And that's a kind of an interesting place for a person to be. It's not necessarily the most interesting thing to write a novel about, but his fame and his beloved character got started really early. And I'd like to read you just a couple of pages. This is set in about 1865 or 1864. And here we go. He says his farewells to Julia, that's his wife, to Julia and the children, and he boards a train for Chattanooga. Everyone knows him, but no one recognizes him, for he travels, as always, in his natural, anonymous state. He's smaller than his reputation, smaller and less ornamented and easier to miss. Slouched in his seat in the gathering twilight, he is clad as unprepossessingly as any rough-knuckled tradesman. He wears cotton trousers of faded blue and a pale, checked gray shirt minus a collar. Atop his head is a cap of white wool knitted for him by his daughter, drawn down close to his eyebrows. He drops into a moment's exhausted sleep and awakens to shouting. He straightens his back as the train enters a long bend, and he sees through the window a line of bonfires set like gemstones along the track. The sun has nearly set, and the stars are coming out, and the fires reflect in the glossy black sides of the passenger cars. He sees men tending these fires, and he wonders what has brought them here. A porter comes through to light the lamps, and by their glow he catches sight of his ghost in the window pane, white cap and wrinkled shirt and all. He snatches off the cap and rakes his fingers through his hair, making himself a shade more presentable. The act brings his face closer to the window, and the firelight illuminates his features from without, and a roar goes up from beyond the glass. The men are soldiers. He sees that now. Some in uniform and some in partial uniform and some not in uniform at all. But they are soldiers, every one, Union soldiers. Grant smiles down on them, and they respond in kind, their upturned faces gleaming in the light. Some of them snap to attention and offer a salute, which he returns despite his dishevelment. The train moves on, and Grant draws his cheek up against the window and peers into the distance ahead. By God, he thinks, they've lighted the tracks all the way to Nashville.
Wow.
Now, that's a true story. More or less, as many things in this book are true stories, more or less. The story of him on the train. Now, we've forgotten a lot of that in America today. It's been a long time. And now we sort of think of that figure mainly as, a silhouette on horseback in a battlefield, or an unremarkable president of the United States, or that grumpy picture on a $50 bill. And we don't think of him as the human being that he was. And my job in visualizing this was to try to recover his humanity. And to do that, I found that for me, and it's often the case, the best way to resurrect that part of him, the real part of him, which is not the real part of him because it's in a book of fiction, but what I understood to be the real part of him was to catch him at his lowest point, not at a point of celebration, not at a point of victory, but at, in fact, the very last few moments of his life, the last year and the last 40 days. He had been swindled just a year before he died out of all of his money and all of his family's money and all of his friends' money by a Wall Street operator who was really running the world's first Ponzi scheme about 20 years before Ponzi was born. And he lost everything. And he lost one more thing shortly after. He was diagnosed by his doctor as having inoperable throat cancer. So the prediction was that he was going to die in about a year, maybe, if he had that long. The sense was that he had lost everything financially. He had lost the ability to care for his wife and his children and his grandchildren. He'd lost the ability to plan ahead and leave something for them. He'd lost his self-respect. And he spent the last year of his life trying to write and finish his memoirs under the tutelage of the great Mark Twain, who helped him and managed to get it published for him. But that last year, especially the last 40 days when he was barely able to walk, he couldn't speak because of the cancer in his throat, and he's struggling to write the last pages of this memoir that we know now as one of the great memoirs of all time, and that indeed, when it was published, saved the financial future of his whole family. So I thought that to be a story of great depth and great heroism and great love. And that's what drew me to it.
Wow. Yeah, it's truly, I think, Grant's story is very, like, a characteristically American story. And
it's
I love
really
that.
American.
Yes.
It's really American. In fact, do you remember Eric Barnum? Was he here? Okay, when Eric used to be at the Northshire, and Eric was, who was the fellow? Another Vermont writer, Howard. I can't think of his last name. Isn't that terrible? But he once wrote Eric a letter, and he said that Finn and Kings of the Earth were two of a handful of the most American novels he'd ever read. And I like to think that this one bit would be added to that. Howard Moser, the mighty Howard Moser. Yeah.
Certainly.
So I like that. I like that idea, because it is.
Yeah, you're creating kind of this canon, almost. I love that.
So John, when does the book come out?
Comes out on November 14, and it can't come out a moment too soon. I have to go home and see if the the hard copies
Oh,
have
if you've
arrived
got
at
your
my
box,
door.
your
They're on their
author.
way.
Wonderful.
They're on their way. But yeah, on November 14th it arrives.
Great.
And we'll see what happens then. We know we have a date at Northshire coming up. I'll be at the big Miami Book Fair at the end of that week.
Oh, wonderful.
Speaking there, and I'll be doing a thing through the Mark Twain House. I've become great friends with all the folks at the Mark Twain House after my first book. So we'll be doing a live stream from there 2 nights after the book comes out.
Ooh,
and then a bunch of other stuff. You know, Civil War, the National Civil War Museum, and all kinds of folks where that grant kind of fits into. Maybe I'll fit into as well.
That's wonderful. Well, we wish you all the best with the book coming out and all the hoopla that's going to go along
Well,
with that. And we're so happy you could join us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, this is our pleasure. So one of the other things Jess and I like to do every month is we talk about the books that we've been reading. So we do a segment called Last, Now, Next, where we talk about the last book we read, what we're reading now, and what we're planning on reading next. And we'd love it. Do you want to play along and join us in that?
I would love to.
Okay.
I'm prepared.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So I'll go first. So the last book I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And this was a reread for me. I think I originally read it in high school, but sort of in honor of October. I thought it would be nice to spend some time with Frankenstein and his monster. And a couple of things really jumped out at me. One is how colored my perception of Frankenstein has been by the wonderful movie Young Frankenstein. And I had really forgotten the setting and all the descriptions of Geneva and the traveling and sort of where this book, truly the heart of this book, takes place.
It's kind of a whole different book
It's a
from what you
completely different
expect
book.
it to be.
But I also think this time what was resonating with me was this concept of technology and science, and as we move forward, taking that moment not just to say, can we create something, but should we create something? And I think at the heart of it, that was what Frankenstein was struggling with, that he had created this monster, never thinking about the ramifications, and if he was just so driven as a scholar that he could do it, he never really stopped to think about whether he should do it. So that was my last book. And I am currently reading The Echo of Old Books by Barbara Davis, and I don't have a copy of that. I've been traveling, and so I have that on my ebook reader, my e-reader. And I just started that, and it's going to be a wonderful comfort read. I can already tell. It's got a little magic. It's a book about books, which every once when I want comfort, I go to a book about books. And a woman who works in a rare book shop has an ability when she holds a book to actually feel the emotions of the last owner of the book. So I've just started that, but it's going to be sort of a nice fall read for me. And then next on my list, because we have Native American Heritage Month is coming up in November, is I have had this on my TBR pile too long, and this is Calling for a Blanket Dance by Oscar Hokia, and he is a member of the Cherokee Nation and the Kiowa tribe on his mother's side, and he has Mexican heritage on his father's side. And this was named one of the best books in 2022. It's won a ton of awards, and even though I'm sure it is difficult subject matter, I know that just reading the descriptions of it, it's sort of one of those honest, heartbreaking yet hopeful books. So I'm really excited to dive into this in November. And speaking of Native American Heritage Month coming up, I wanted to recommend this book. I have it both in the board book and the picture book because I give it to like every child I can find. But this is a lovely story. It's called We Are Grateful, and it's Ojali Haliga. And this is a book about how the Cherokee people just celebrate everyday life through the seasons. And it is a wonderful look at the contemporary life of Cherokee people. And so it's got the syllabary inside and introduces you both to just sort of the culture and what they celebrate in each season, and then also some of the language. So I just wanted to point that out. And I know they have it at Northshire, and they may have it at Manchester Community Library, but just a good recommendation if you're looking for a way to really honor Native American Heritage Month. So that's my stuff this month. Jess?
Fabulous. All right, let me grab my pile. So I just finished reading Rouge by Mona Awad, and she wrote Bunny, which was a bestseller. Haven't read it. This was a lot of fun. It was kind of a spooky read. It was good for October. It's basically like Snow White meets that Stanley Kubrick film Eyes Wide Shut. Like there's some weird culty things that are kind of happening. It's all rooted in this character whose mother passes away, and she kind of is thrust into this world, and she starts to learn about who this person was, because she and her mother apparently didn't know each other very well at all. But there's this strange fascination, this hyperfixation that this book has on cosmetics and the skincare industry and looking eternally youthful. And so it kind of investigates that in a bit of a spooky way. It unfolds in a really wonderful way, and it's beautifully written. So I really enjoyed that. Different kind of read for me, but I liked it quite a bit. And then right now, I just cracked into this. Wonder Confronts Certainty, Russian writers. This is all about Russian literature and really like the relevance that it has today. And I thought that this would really, I mean, I've been reading some Tolstoy lately, and I've been trying to kind of find a way to justify that to myself. Like, okay, there are all of these other reads that I'm seeing, all these new releases, especially since I started at Northshire, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's time for me to delve into like some genre fiction, but this has been comforting to me in a way that like, no, there's still something that you can extract from some of these really dusty tomes that are a little bit intimidating, like War and Peace or Crime and Punishment. Mm-hmm. And so this has been nice, comforting in a very strange way. And then I'm very excited to start Northwoods by Daniel Mason. This is my next. We just had Daniel Mason in the store for an event, and it was fabulous. This book it's about a house in the Northwoods of Massachusetts, and it centers in on this home. It's like the central character that you observe as the reader what happens in this house to its inhabitants, you know, people and animal. There's insects and everything in this book. It's kind of like a beautiful celebration of natural history in that way. But you just watch as life evolves from the perspective of this home. And it's apparently like a love letter to New England. And of course, I'm very interested in New England. So I cannot wait.
That sounds great. Yeah. All right, John, you're up.
I'm up. I brought no visual aids.
It's okay.
However, book that I just finished reading, a book I happened upon at Northshire, never heard of it before, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. I feel like I'm setting that up, but I'm really not. By an Italian writer named Dino Buzzati. And I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's sort of a coeval of Italo Calvino, Calvino being one of my very, very, very favorites, and there was something about the book, it's called Catastrophe, that on the surface of it reminded me that I thought maybe it was just because he was an Italian, it was published in the 60s, made me think of Calvino. But it's a lot like Calvino, and that's not a terrible thing to say. The stories, short stories, the stories tend to be a little equivocal and a little lacking in resolution, and they're terrific. It's just a delight, and it was so good that I think, gee, I lent it to my wife, who lent it to my daughter, and it's probably now with my son-in-law right now, and so it's making the rounds in the family. Reading right now Rogues by Patrick Radden Keefe. If you're familiar with him, he's a New Yorker writer, and Rogues is, as you can imagine, short pieces, moderate length pieces from the New Yorker about rogues, terrible people. There's one about the search for El Chapo. There's one about a Dutch gangster. Are there Dutch gangsters? Did we know that? I'm not sure. A Dutch gangster who was actually turned into the feds by his sister, who then has to go into hiding and has spent the rest of her life hiding from her brother's associates, shall we say. Up next, Timothy Egan's A Fever in the Heartland, about the rise of, the terrifying rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the heartland of America around the Midwest in the 1920s. And it should be pretty terrifying.
Indeed.
Well, great. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. All the best with the
Thank you.
General and Julia, and we'll be looking for you at Northshire soon.
Yes, December 1st.
Yes.
Excellent.
It'll
well,
be
we'll
good.
see you then.
All right,
Thanks
thanks.
again for being here. And now it's time to go to our library corner. And with us we have Paige Vignola, who is the Assistant Director of the Manchester Community Library. Hi, Paige.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's so great to have you. Well, we're ready to hear about some of the events happening at the library this November.
Oh, fantastic. We, as always, have a lot going on, but there's one thing in particular I know is going to appeal to you. The library has started a series of write-ins, or I should say will be starting a series of write-ins every Saturday in November for NaNoWriMo. 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, there will be 2 dedicated spaces in the library for those who want to get together and work or work separately, and then a socialization kind of square. So there'll be food and snacks, and people can hang out and maybe chat with others in the area who are working on their novel for Writing Month.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what NaNoWriMo is, it stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it's a nonprofit organization that helps inspire creativity in writers, where people go online to nanowrimo.com, and you can sign up and declare your project and a goal, and then you have friends and encouragement to help you reach a writing goal. The standard goal is 50,000 words in a month, which is a really big goal, especially in November when there's Thanksgiving. But I have personally already signed up to come and write on all 4 Saturdays in
That's
November.
fantastic,
So
you know.
I'm so excited to have a local write-in. Thank you to you and the library for offering that.
Well, helps keep us accountable, right? So I'll be there as well.
Oh,
So.
great.
So November the 16th, that's a Thursday from 5 to 6 o'clock, the library is really happy to welcome in Vermont Folklife and the Manchester Historical Society, and they're going to be doing a listening party. Vermont Folklife does listening parties quite a bit, and it's kind of like they describe it as a DJ set with spoken word and shared voices, music, and sounds of the world. And for November 16th, it's going to be a, and I quote, immersed sound and story as we hear about maple sugaring with horses, a fiddle tune at a Franco-American music jam, and the strains of Burmese lullaby, or the many generations of shopkeepers at H.N. Williams store in Dorset. So there's a lot going to be happening in that listening party. I'm very much excited about that.
Great.
Yeah. The same evening, back to back, so once you have left the listening party, you can then move on over to the 6 to 7 o'clock event that we've got, which is John Olszewski, The Mind of a Killer. And so he is the author of The Long Dark Walk and serial shorts, and he's going to be coming in order to be able to talk about the mindset that creates, I guess, the ability to behave in these monstrous ways, right? So mass killers, serial killers, spree killers, and he says even professional athletes who end up in prison, right? So there's quite a bit going on with that. So The Mind of the Killer is after the reading or the listening party on November 16th. On the 25th, I don't think there's a person in the Northshire who probably wouldn't know about this, but Taconic Music plays their Thanksgiving concert. And so that's going to be Saturday, November 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. And if you have never listened to a Taconic Music concert, you really need to make sure that you put that on your priority list. And I do know they love playing in our Hunter Room because of the acoustics, so you cannot miss this particular event. December 2nd, we have our second annual Winter Bazaar, and that is from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's all local artists and artisans who come in order to be able to set up stalls and sell their wares, their creations to the community. Last year it was just an incredible event, and this year I've got over 25 different vendors who are going to be there. I've got food trucks that are going to be there. I even have a concert space that's going to be dedicated to the Maple Street School Rock Band, and they're going to be playing us a concert too. So that should be a lot of fun. And then on Friday, December 8th, we have Stephen Collins and Purnima Kirby who are coming to do a Get This 2-person rendition of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. Yeah. So Stephen Collins is going to be Ebenezer Scrooge, and Purnima is going to be everybody else. And it's an hour-long program, and it is lighthearted and entertaining, and all the story of the salvaged misanthrope, right? So it should be a great deal of fun, and I really kind of look forward to kicking off our holiday season with these couple events.
Oh, that is fantastic. Well, I'm definitely, you can visit the website and find all the events there, but definitely some of those are going on the calendar right away. That's exciting. Thanks, Paige.
You're welcome.
And what's happening at the Northshire?
Oh yeah, we've got some fun things coming up in November. We have former Governor Madeleine May Kunin is going to be coming to the store. She just finished and hasn't been released yet, but it is coming out soon, a new collection of poems called Walk With Me. So she's going to be speaking on that with Barbara Morrow, you know, Northshire like aficionado. So that's going to be really cool. And that is on Friday, November 10th at 6 p.m. And then we have another poetry event coming up with Aria D. Matthews. She is Philadelphia's poet laureate, or young poet laureate, previous. And she will be coming to do a reading also on a Friday on November 17th at 6 p.m. And I'm very excited for that. I read her poetry and it's phenomenal. So that's going to be really cool. We're doing a local author event. So we're going to have a few different local authors who are going to be able to come and do like a book signing. So we'll have like them all set up. And so people can kind of chat with them. They can network a little bit, talk about the process of writing. And so that will be fun. That will be on a Saturday afternoon, November 18th from 2 to 4. And then Jon Clinch, who was just here and spoke on his wonderful book, The General and Julia, will be speaking more on that book on December 1st at 6 p.m. And that's a Friday. And so I'm very excited.
Wow, so much to put on the calendar. That's great. One of the things we did last month that was fun is we sort of talked about a hot topic. Last month we were talking a little bit about is listening to an audiobook the same as reading a book. And this month, one of the things that we came up with was talking a little bit about book covers and how once a book is made into a movie or a television series, they change the cover of the book to have a scene from the movie or the TV show on it. And some of us don't really like that. So we thought this might be a topic for you to bring back to your book club or to talk about with your bookish friends and see where people land on it. But thanks to Jess, we have a great example here, which is the original cover of Killers of the Flower Moon. And now look what's out. It's got the movie on it. So Paige, I know you feel strongly about this issue. Let me just ask you how you feel about this.
Yes, I'm curious.
I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover. But I am drawn to books because of their covers. Not necessarily judging them on their covers, but it is a draw. I'm not necessarily drawn to actors' faces as much as I am to book art. So I personally, and I was having this conversation with my 17-year-old not too long ago. It's like, well, do you have any covers? Do you have any books in your personal library that has the movie cover? Oh no, I would never buy one of those. I don't want one of those in my collection. I mean, and I realized, yes, that's snobby. I get it. But it's also true. It's off-putting to me. I'm sure as readers, you guys probably have the same sort of general feeling of I want to read the book before I see somebody else's rendition of it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like if you have the book cover with the movie on it, it's almost already inserting itself into your psyche.
Yeah, and I think too, well, one of the things we talked about in the pre-show was that maybe this is written into the contract when they make the deal to turn the book into a movie or a TV show. There's a possibility the studio says, and then you're going to put a cover out that's like this. But do you think, like if anyone hasn't read Killers of the Flower Moon, that they would pick this up because of the movie cover on it?
I mean, I wouldn't.
What do you think, Jess?
There has to be there must be a percentage, right? Like there must be some audience, but I do think it might be a smaller audience. Someone who is familiar with the movie poster or they're familiar with Leonardo DiCaprio. I actually went back and I looked at my own library, and the only book that I have that is a movie tie-in also has Leonardo DiCaprio on it.
Oh, that's funny.
The Great Gatsby.
And it has him on it.
I didn't buy that book because of the cover, but rather I bought it because I wanted to read it, and it was just what was most accessible. So I suppose I love the idea of somebody who might not typically read picking something up because they're intrigued by that. That to me is wonderful, but I can't really figure that would be a huge percentage of people.
And maybe it sends more people to the movie theater or to the streaming service. So that's our hot topic for this month that you can take and discuss with your bookish friends or your book club and let us know what you think. I'm sure there's some way to comment about our show on the GNAT website. But for that, I think we should probably wrap it up for this month. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Paige. And thank you for joining us. And until next time, we hope you keep reading. Thanks.